In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. May Allah accept our prayers, our mornings, our participations in these holy days and nights, and accept mine as well. I would like to start my discussion tonight with reciting a hadith, a quotation from Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam says, "O people, the messenger of God said, whoever sees an aggressive tyrant legalize the forbidden of God, the forbiddance of God, breaches divine laws, oppress the tradition of the Prophet, oppress the worships of God, but does not concede his opposition to God in word or in action, surely Allah will place that tyrant in the hell." As we discussed in our previous nights, we mentioned that freedom is not an inner or a power from inside of a human being, but it is a condition. A condition, a social or political or cultural or moral condition that allows people to do whatever they want to do, or allows them to say whatever they want to say. But the result of freedom happens inside of a human being, which is recognition and creation, and that creates a power to take the society, the whole society forward. And we mentioned that freedom is so important to the life of human being, to the creation and to the building of humanity. And we also mentioned that freedom is the foundation and the base of Ashoura's revolution. And we discussed how can we link these two to each other. And the next night we mentioned another issue, and I discussed that there is a power, inner power, inside of human being. There is a power like the power of Earth's gravity, like gravity that pushes, that attract human being towards something, towards someone, and makes you to move on, and makes you, gives you the power to go ahead and have the energy and power to make something, to do something. And we said that was love. And in one word, love is saying yes. Saying we agree, we want to do, we want to reach, we want to attain, we want to gain something. And we also discussed that love was also the foundation of Ashoura's revolution. As long as we remember love in the human body, we can connect ourselves to the love of Ashoura. And in some condition, some situation, we don't have to, or we don't want to say yes. We want to say no. When we dislike something, when we disagree with some issues, political, social, or cultural issues, we want to say no. And if we want to say no, there's always powers, forces, to get through and to make things happen without noticing our voices, without noticing that we say no. And the conflict starts right there. And that's how another issue creates that I am going to discuss tonight, which is resistance. Resistance is also a power, an inner power, related to social, political, and cultural issues. When we don't like some issues, when we don't like what government is doing, we protest. We raise our voice, we show our anger, we get onto the street, and we want to say no. And besides saying no, we want to stop that project, that doing is happening by government or anybody else. Mainly resistance defined by political side of resistance. You can see many resistance movements in the history of humanity, fighting for freedom, fighting for justice. A resistance movement is not a violent movement. It's not included violation, but it can be violated by the government force or by other parties getting involved in the opposition towards resistance. So resistance also can be a decision-making process. You want to become a doctor, your family doesn't have enough money, and you have to also work part-time. There are so many challenges in your life, in your school, in your universities, and you want to fight with all those struggles. During this fight, these struggles, you want to always remember that you promised something, and you want to represent that promise on the table one day. You want to show your father, your mother, your relatives that you one day become a doctor. And it's not easy to become a doctor. You need to fight for whatever you want to do, for whatever you want to make. And in the process of years and years, you fight for whatever you want. This process is a resistance process. You need a role model. You need a kind of power from inside to keep you warm, to keep you alive, to keep you light on the road, going and going without getting tired, without giving up. And also, in terms of morality, you want to stop doing something wrong you're always doing. You want to become a good person. You don't want to lie. You don't want to think bad. You don't want to do bad. And that's not easy. Myself, I wanted to quit smoking, and it was so struggling, so difficult moment for me. And I understood how difficult it is other habits that we want to quit. And sometimes we don't even realize how bad those habits are. Finally, I could make my decision and make it the point that I quit smoking permanently. But there are some decisions, there are some points that they are not easy getting or easy reaching. Needs to be fought for it. So, to gain whatever you want, to attain any political, social, cultural goals, you need to know that you need a power to keep your word, to give you the opportunity to fight for it. Many lefties movements in Middle East, in South American countries, in South Asian countries, there were fights for justice, there were fights for democracy, and we had some role models that we always try to study their lives and how hard they worked and how hard they fought. And their stories become books, become stories that we learn from our fathers, who we taught to our children. But we need to remember that there is a story of a full show a complete resistance, a complete possible resistance in the full meaning of it. If you want to fight for something and you don't have enough power and you need a role model to give you that power, that you don't have it, that you look for it. If you want to fight for freedom, if you want to fight for democracy, if you want to fight for human rights, if you want to fight for God's rights, you need a role model, you need a story that can be modeling you, warming you up, putting you on the road, taking all difficulties of your body. The story of Imam Hussain and Ashoura is the story of resistance, a model of resistance. This is, I don't think anybody can argue this against this issue. All of us, we deeply believe that the story of Ashoura is the story of resistance. And we all know that the whole project was to ask Imam Hussain, or force Imam Hussain to submit to the authority of Yazid. If Imam Hussain would agree and submitted the authority of Yazid, everything would be okay. But Imam Hussain alayhi salam wanted to show that how we can say no. And sometimes saying no is so pricey, so difficult to say no. Sometimes saying yes is pricey as well. So Imam Hussain alayhi salam was forced, and in some sources saying about 30,000 soldiers sieged Imam Hussein's 71 or 72 members of camp and made them to stop in a point called Karbala. In this point, he had the opportunity to break down his promises or his decision and say yes. You may also argue with me that how could I possibly again bring a role model from the Middle Age history? I will touch this issue after the night of Ashoura, inshallah. But I just want to quickly touch the issue that we see the method, we don't see the action itself fully. We see the method, how in a condition, in a situation that he could say, he said no. And then what was the price of saying this no? And then how could he deal with these problems, with the disaster, with these difficulties? And then in our own lives, if we really love Imam Hussain, we can quit smoking. We can quit doing wrong stuff in our own life. If Imam Hussain is our role model, we need to show to the next year of Muharram, we change something in our life. If we do not change anything, and we are going to bring the same person again to this majlis, we need to revisit the meaning of role modeling and revisit the meaning of Ashoura in our own life. So, Imam Hussain, when he was sieged, he showed that he has the right to say no. He has the right to say we are resisting against a government who doesn't follow the rule and the law of Allah. And to protest this, Imam Hussain alayhi salam considered that he would lose all he has. So, again, in our personal life, the role model Imam Hussain alayhi salam, who can touch our lives. We need to understand that when our role model decided to say no, even the price of that no was giving all he had for the willing of Allah, we need to understand that we have to sacrifice something to be able to put our name as a person who loves Imam Hussain. Anyhow, the hadith that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, Imam Hussain alayhi salam says, or fully describes that what made him to stand up and what made him to protest and what made him to decide to start the movement, the great movement of resistance. We had many resistance movements before Ashoura's revolution, but I think human beings learned from the past to the point we reached Karbala. We see a fully, a complete understanding of what type of ability we have and what type of sacrifice need to be done for resistance. And if you listen or pay attention to conversation between companions of Imam Hussain, between close family relatives of Imam Hussain, the night before of Ashoura, you can see the way they pray, the way they talk, the way they appear, and the way they show our respect to each other, and the way they have sort of competition to get killed. Competition to get killed. All this member of the whole action in Ashoura can teach us that a management, a plan, a decision was made by Imam Hussain alayhi salam to gain something. He wanted to gain the willingness of Allah, and that was so pricey, so big, so important. And he called him Shaheed, and he made him to be Shaheed, and he made all his companions to be Shaheed. And if you want to connect ourselves to Ashoura, it is easy to just think whatever problems you have in your own life, whatever difficulties, whatever you dislike in your own life, just remember there was somebody, there was people who decided to fight for something to gain, and it was so pricey, so problematic, so hard. And what I can end my discussion tonight is to see the third issue after freedom, love. We mentioned resistance. Resistance is a story of excitement for youth, for whoever loves justice and freedom and humanity. You can't gain those beautiful and eternal elements of humanity, which is freedom, which is love, which is justice. You cannot gain them unless you pay the price. The price and the road and the bridge to freedom and humanity and justice is resistance. And resistance starts from your inner issues, your inside, from yourself. You start fighting against your own self and rebuild yourself the way you like to be built, and build the way that your role model which Imam Husain is, he wants you to be in that way. And I hope next year, when we come here, we have a different selves, a different personality, a better personality, a personality that smells the beautiful, the paradise smell of Ashoura. And in that night we can say that I salute you, O my master, O my leader, O my Imam. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.